Arthur Williams II is considered the greatest counterfeiter in America. He forged tens of millions of dollars and baffled the FBI for many years. Imagine, this man was caught with a suitcase containing $60,000 in counterfeit money, yet they couldn't prosecute him, and he escaped their grasp easily. How did he do it, and how did his 15-year-old son end up being the reason for his imprisonment? The man whom the FBI couldn't catch was exposed by his teenage son in the dumbest way possible. The story is amazing, full of family drama, police investigations, forgery, theft, and incredible events that are hard to believe. It's a rich story, folks, and not to be missed. So, prepare yourselves some snacks or heavy meals as you like. Hello everyone, this is Batter. Before we dive into the story, I want to tell you that we will have a new live stream on the Wolf app tomorrow, Saturday at 8 p.m. Mecca time. Our streams on Wolf have been amazing lately, with strong and impressive interactions from you. Like our previous streams, I have an incredible story prepared for you. This time, the story is about a bank robbery that happened in Japan, and it was done in a crazy way. Forget armed robberies and underground tunnel heists. This time, the operation is even crazier. If you want to hear this story, all you need to do is be present tomorrow in the room, which you can access through the link below. Register in the room and make sure to set a reminder for 8 p.m. tomorrow, Saturday, Mecca time. Trust me, the story I have prepared for you will amaze you. The hero of our story today is a man named Arthur Williams II. We will call him Arthur II for short, because he also had a son whom he named Arthur III, a family of Arthurs, if you will. Arthur II is considered the greatest counterfeiter in America, capable of creating identical copies of the dollar bill. Arthur entered the world of crime at a young age. His first crime was breaking a parking meter to buy groceries for his family and help his mother. One day, he returned home, opened the fridge, and found it empty. He felt a great deal of anger, wondering why they were poor and why their situation was so bad. He stormed out of the house, furious, and while walking down the street, he saw a parking meter. In a fit of rage, he hit the meter with his hand and heard the coins inside clinking. He thought to himself, if he could open the meter somehow, he could take the money inside. He played with the meter, trying to open it, and eventually managed to insert a small metal piece into the lock, turning it until it opened. When it did, he took all the coins inside and went to the supermarket to buy groceries for the house. When he returned home, his mother was surprised and asked him where he got all the groceries. He told her he broke a parking meter and took the money inside. She told him not to steal money for groceries, as God would provide for them. He replied that God did provide by teaching him how to break the meter lock. The main reason for their poor financial situation was that Arthur's father abandoned them in 1983 when Arthur was just 11 years old. This was one of the biggest shocks of his life. After his father left, they couldn't afford the rent and had to move out of their house, living for a while in a homeless shelter. It was a period of pure survival. Eventually, they were moved to government-supported housing projects, commonly known as public housing, usually reserved for people with low or limited income, rented out by the government at low prices. This was a dark period in Arthur's life, and seeing his mother's face marked by fatigue and despair increased his anger towards his father for leaving them in such a state. Growing up in the public housing projects, Arthur was surrounded by gangs and illegal activities. He started hanging out with some bad kids, forming a small gang, committing petty thefts like stealing from stores and cars, breaking parking meters, and similar activities. In 1987, when he was 15, Arthur met an older man named Da Vinci, one of his mother's friends or possibly even her secret lover. Da Vinci was close to the family, and when Arthur was caught trying to steal a car, Da Vinci went to the police station, posted bail, and signed the necessary paperwork. As they walked out of the station, Da Vinci told Arthur that if he wanted to be a criminal and a thief, he needed to be smarter. He needed to move away from petty thefts like breaking meters and stealing cars and stores. He needed something better. Arthur asked what was better, and Da Vinci told him to come along. He would show him. Da Vinci took Arthur to an old warehouse. They entered the building, rode an old elevator down to the basement, which looked like a workshop filled with machines, papers, inks, and various tools. Arthur was amazed by the sight, and the distinct smell of ink.
Da Vinci began showing
Arthur how to use the machines and tools, explaining the process of printing counterfeit money. Arthur was mesmerized, watching as Da Vinci produced fake money, the paper for which people around the world fought, being created right in front of him. Da Vinci became like a mentor to Arthur, teaching him the steps of counterfeiting, how to mix colors, create molds, and assign serial numbers to each bill. Arthur loved the atmosphere and the artistic side of counterfeiting, and he admired Da Vinci as a father figure, valuing his approval and the money they made together. It became like a job for him. However, about a year later, Da Vinci suddenly disappeared. He stopped visiting their house and communicating with them. When Arthur went to the workshop, the warehouse was locked, and he couldn't get in without a key. Da Vinci had vanished from his life, just like his father did, leaving Arthur feeling abandoned once again. Arthur wondered if something had happened to Da Vinci, considering he sold counterfeit money to gangs. Maybe he had been kidnapped or killed. But Da Vinci was gone for good. So, Arthur decided to return to his old gang and resume his petty thefts, stealing from stores and cars. Arthur's second major mistake during this period was entering into an illicit relationship, resulting in the birth of his son, Arthur III, when Arthur was only 17 years old. Determined to be there for his son and not abandon him like his father did, Arthur needed to make more money to support his son and his son's mother. His friends came up with a new way to make money: robbing drug dealers. They would dress as police officers and use a car that looked like a police car to ambush drug dealers, taking their drugs and money, pretending to be cops. This wasn't surprising at the time, as it was common knowledge that many real police officers were corrupt, confiscating drugs and money for themselves. Arthur and his friends repeated this scheme for a while until a dangerous encounter with a drug dealer who called for backup, resulting in a shootout. Arthur was shot in the leg and left for dead, only to be rescued by paramedics. This near-death experience convinced Arthur it was time to leave Chicago, even if it meant leaving his son and his son's mother behind, just as his father had done to him. Arthur moved to Texas in 1990, trying to live an honest life with low-paying, hard jobs, determined to leave his criminal past behind. During this time, Arthur met a woman and fell in love. When their relationship grew stronger, Arthur confided in her about his past crimes and counterfeiting. Surprisingly, she was not horrified but rather impressed, urging him to return to counterfeiting, believing they could become rich and live a better life. Encouraged by her support, Arthur began planning his counterfeiting operation again, purchasing printing machines and equipment, recalling what he had learned from Da Vinci. Arthur started experimenting, gradually producing small quantities of counterfeit money, being cautious about spending it. One of the biggest challenges was disposing of the fake money without raising suspicion, a skill he learned from Da Vinci. Arthur planned to increase production over time, ensuring the quality of the counterfeit bills matched the real ones. However, in 1996, the U.S. government released a new, more secure $100 bill with advanced security features, making it much harder to counterfeit. When Arthur saw the new $100 bill, he wasn't discouraged. Instead, he was excited. He saw it as a challenge. True, this was a completely new level and different from what he learned from Da Vinci, but it was time to become a master craftsman and carve his own path. Now, there were tools that didn't exist in Da Vinci's time, like the rise of computer design software, especially Photoshop, which was revolutionary. Arthur knew the first thing needed was the right printing paper. The cashiers could easily use a special pen to check the bill, and the line was supposed to turn yellow if the bill was genuine. However, on ordinary paper, the line would turn brown. This new security feature was achieved through the chemical components of the paper, which were a mix of cotton, linen, animal glue, and other chemicals. Arthur and his wife started ordering paper from all over the world, trying to find something similar to the $100 bill paper. They spent a long time testing different kinds, but the line always turned brown, leading to frustration. One day, in frustration, his wife grabbed a phone book, threw it on the table, and randomly drew a line on it with the pen. Amazingly, the line turned yellow. They contacted the company that printed the phone book and pretended to be a school needing the paper for a project. They managed to get the paper and realized it was perfect. The thickness was close to that of the $100 bill. They solved the paper problem, the watermark, and the security strip issue. The remaining big challenge was the ink that changed color. One day, Arthur saw a car painted with a color that changed between purple and green, similar to the color change in the new bill. They contacted the car paint company and found out it was the same company that made the ink for the government's money printing. They managed to get the ink and had everything they needed: the paper, the ink, and the design. Printing required special techniques. Arthur knew the bill's creamy green color couldn't be achieved with regular printers. It needed to be printed with a press and needed multiple layers of ink. They printed the watermark and security strip, then the central image and border, followed by the seal and serial number, pressing the paper each time. They even had software to automatically change the serial number on each bill. Arthur earned his title as the greatest money counterfeiter in America, possibly the world. They produced high-quality bills that passed all checks. His wife tested their first batch by buying something cheap with a $100 bill, getting $90 in real money back. The cashier checked the bill with a pen, confirmed the watermark and changing ink, and accepted it. They printed large quantities of fake money, around $50,000 a month, spending it cautiously. They rotated locations, laundering the money by buying cheap items and getting real money in change. They built their wealth, enjoying their freedom. By 2000, Arthur decided to return to his hometown, Chicago, bringing his wife. He continued to support his son and his son's mother financially, but hadn't seen his son for years. His son, now 10 years old, started bonding with him again, while Arthur reconnected with his old gang. Arthur continued his criminal activities with his old gang and told them about his new business of printing counterfeit money. When he showed them the money, they were amazed and couldn't tell it apart from real money. Arthur wasn't just sharing this to make conversation. He wanted them to join him in the business and help him because he was printing more money than he could spend. Some of his friends had connections with big restaurants, nightclubs, and casinos, so they could distribute the counterfeit money in these places. The money was so well made that no one suspected it, not even the FBI, who started noticing the high-quality counterfeit bills. They considered it the best counterfeit dollar in the market. Arthur's counterfeit money was spreading everywhere, but he was printing much more than he could launder. It was easier to sell $100,000 in counterfeit money to a gang for $30,000 than to launder it himself. So, he started selling his counterfeit money to gangs, who would then launder it. However, dealing with gangs was dangerous. Arthur was now dealing with people who could end his life in an instant, including Russian gangs and the Italian mafia. He became very cautious, always checking his surroundings for bugs or hidden microphones. He even carried a device to scan for surveillance equipment and insisted on searching anyone he met to ensure they weren't wearing a wire. In 2002, a Russian gang he was dealing with invited him to a party. The party was filled with illegal activities, including drugs. Arthur brought the counterfeit money, around $60,000, and some hashish as a gift from his Russian friends. After about half an hour, there was a loud knock on his hotel room door, and someone shouted, "Police, open the door." It seemed someone at the party or one of the hotel staff had reported the illegal activities. The police entered the room with their weapons drawn and started searching for drugs. They found the hashish on the table and the bag with $60,000 in counterfeit money. One of the officers, experienced with money, felt something was off with the bills. Arthur was arrested, and the hashish and counterfeit money were taken as evidence. He thought it was the end for him, as the police would quickly discover the money was fake, which was a federal crime. During the investigation, Arthur's lawyer read the police report, which stated that the door was open and the police saw the hashish on the table, justifying their search. Arthur told his lawyer that it was impossible for the police to see the hashish from the hallway. The lawyer argued that the search was illegal, as the police needed a warrant or a valid reason to enter the room. The judge ruled that the search was indeed illegal, and the case was dismissed. Arthur was released, even though he was caught with $60,000 in counterfeit money. After his release, Arthur became even more paranoid, knowing the FBI would be watching him. He stopped all printing activities and dealings with gangs. Feeling the need for a change, he decided to track down his father, who had abandoned him and his mother when he was 11. After some searching, He found his father living in Alaska and wrote him a letter. His father responded with a phone call, and they talked for an hour before deciding to meet. Arthur flew to Alaska and felt a mix of happiness and anger when he saw his father. Over the next few days, they shared their life stories, and his father apologized for abandoning him, explaining that he was going through a dark period in his life. Their conversations brought them closer, and Arthur felt the bond of having a father. Encouraged by this closeness, Arthur told his father about his counterfeiting activities. Surprisingly, his father asked him to print some money for him, saying he was in a tough spot financially. Arthur was hesitant but wanted to make his father proud, so he agreed. Arthur had some paper and printing equipment stored in Chicago, which he had shipped to Alaska. He and his father set up a printing workshop and started working together. This experience brought them even closer, and Arthur was proud to show his father his skills. However, the results this time weren't as good as before, as they lacked some of the necessary tools. Arthur told his father to keep the counterfeiting activities a secret and to test the money before spending it. His father agreed, but told his new wife, Anise, about it. Anise took $3,000 of the counterfeit money to launder it and gave some to their neighbors to help with the laundering process. Arthur's father, his wife Anise, and their neighbors all started spending the counterfeit money without thinking they needed to launder it because it looked so real. They didn't try to exchange it for real money, they just spent it recklessly. Arthur noticed that his father was acting strangely and avoiding questions about the money, which made him suspicious. Sensing something was wrong, Arthur decided to leave Alaska, telling his father he felt uneasy about printing counterfeit money. Arthur's departure was timely because Anise had given some of the counterfeit money to their neighbors, who were spending it freely. One day, they tried to use it in a store, and the cashier immediately recognized it as fake, calling the police. The police then recruited the neighbors as informants to catch the bigger fish, the person printing the money. Eventually, Arthur's father and Anise were arrested. During the investigation, Anise revealed everything about Arthur's involvement. Arthur, who had returned to his wife Natalie, was shocked when the special forces raided his house. Fortunately, Arthur had hidden all the evidence in plastic containers buried in a forest. Despite this, Arthur was arrested due to Anise's testimony. Arthur received a 3-year sentence, while his father got 5 years since he was caught in the act of printing. Anise and the neighbors went free because they cooperated with the authorities. Arthur's time in prison was difficult, marked by separation from his son and the end of his marriage to Natalie. During his time in prison, Arthur reflected on his life and vowed to leave the world of crime behind. Upon his release in 2005, Arthur tried to rebuild his relationship with his son and support him financially. Their relationship improved significantly. In 2005, a well-known magazine published a story about Arthur, calling him the greatest counterfeiter in the world, mentioning that he had forged over $10 million. His son read the article and was amazed, finding it hard to believe his father could have forged so much money. Inspired by the article, his son tried printing counterfeit money at home using a regular computer and printer. When his mother saw what he was doing, she immediately called Arthur. Arthur felt ashamed and rushed home, finding his son printing fake $20 bills. His son was going through a tough time, using drugs like Xanax, and was emotionally unstable. A heated argument ensued, with the son angrily throwing the fake bills at his father. Coincidentally, a police car was passing by at that moment and saw the altercation. Arthur tried to calm the situation, but the police got involved. The FBI soon arrived, closing off the street and arresting Arthur, finding counterfeit bills in his possession. Arthur faced a 9-year sentence this time, as the evidence was undeniable. His son, being a minor, was sent to juvenile detention for a few months before being released. Arthur felt a deep sense of hopelessness during his second imprisonment. Meanwhile, his son continued counterfeiting on a smaller scale, gradually improving his skills and equipment. In 2009, at the age of 18, he was caught red-handed by the FBI while printing a large batch of counterfeit money. Arthur, still in prison, was heartbroken when he heard the news. He requested to be transferred to the same prison as his son, and the request was granted a month later. During their time in prison, Arthur and his son became close, making up for lost time and discussing their future plans. Arthur's dream was to become an artist. After his release in 2015, he pursued a career in art, incorporating security features from his counterfeit bills into his artwork. His pieces, featuring watermarks and color-changing ink, sold for tens of thousands of dollars. Arthur's life took a complete turn for the better, using his skills for legitimate and artistic purposes. His story, despite its ups and downs, ended on a positive note.